Are you ready? Yes, we are! Are you ready? Yes, we are! Okay then, let's get started. Welcome back to another fine day here at Sisseton, Wahpeton College. And with your professor, Victor Singingeagle. I have a hand drum here. This one's a virgin, meaning, well, that's what we say in my language. It means it's so brand new that the sound hasn't really become very resonant. So I'm going to use an older, probably not even a real native drum, but I like it because the sound is, I like that sound better. Better close the door because I get too noisy and my voice might carry down the hallway. There we go. Close the door. I promised to you that I was going to explain the background of this poem, the Pow-Wow. And as I attempt to explain it, I need to tell you a little background. Stop muttering and just read. It says here, Professor Singingeagle's speculations about the author. One thing to remember about the poem is that it is the speaker that's not necessarily the poet herself, but a lot of times, well, let me just read. It says here, it appears that the author is well versed, pardon the pun, in European history, culture, and literature. She is tapping into something very ancient, something that reaches back to the days when Europeans were also tribal. They lived in tribal communities. Excuse me. I drank a whole lot of tea and it's starting to make me hiccup. In those times when the Europeans lived in these tribal communities, they often would go to war, tribes not getting along, they would have a war, and they would have ceremonies before the war and even during these battles. Let me read. When they went to war with neighboring tribes, they often brought along a medicine man or shaman to stir up the battle mojo, so to speak. That spiritual leader might compose parody chants or songs or poems meant to ridicule the enemy, devastating satire, making fun of their enemy. And they would oftentimes carry a hand drum and they would chant their poem. Boom, boom. That's why you saw me carrying a hand drum, and they boom, 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 and they would do the drum while they're going to battle. So this is something that we need to know. And apparently the girl who wrote this poem, well, let me keep reading. In later centuries, this old impulse to mock and expose evolved into European literary satire. Writers such as Jonathan Swift in A Modest Proposal or Alexander Pope in The Rape of the Lock adopted this style, and they also adopted something that we call a persona. Persona. It's like person with an A. What is a persona? Well, the word persona, I think it's Greek and it means mask. Let me read. A persona in this case is a false voice. They're not using their real voice. They're using a false voice to reveal the arrogance, ignorance, or cruelty of their intended victim. Or, in this case, their own society sometimes, as in Jonathan Swift and Alexander Pope. They're making fun of their own societies. Imagine if I were to write a poem against, I don't know, Congress or the orange guy, and I might take on a persona, not use my own voice. I would take on, pretend to be somebody else. That's what's called a persona. So, these people who took on these authors or poets, they wrote as if they were the very people they wanted to criticize a lot of times. And they kept the beat of the old hand drum and alternate and adopted it to meter and rhyme. So that's why I was telling you a couple of weeks ago about iambic pentameter or iambic tetrameter, as in the case of this, I believe it's 8 symbols per line or 8 syllables per line. That's iambic tetrameter. Today the Chumash Pow-Wow calls and folks respond in caravans. Today the Chumash Pow-Wow calls. That's iambic tetrameter. So let me keep reading. The powwow does something very similar. The poem's speaker takes on the voice of a well-meaning but utterly clueless outsider. Someone describing native people through a condescending lens. Yet the sophistication of the satire, the accuracy of the detail, the control of the tone, and the haunting weight of that final stanza all suggest the true author herself is a native, probably a member of that very Chumash community. In other words, the poet borrows the tools of European satire, the persona, the irony, the sting of ridicule, and turns them against colonizers themselves. This poem becomes a literary hand drum, rhythmic, mocking, and full of quiet power. So let's look at it together. So if I were going to read like in the old days of European satirists, they'd say, today the Chumash Pow-Wow calls and folks respond in caravans, forsaking grander city malls to shake their conquered brothers' hands. And many come from distant lands with hunger for exotic arts. Their sacred pilgrimage demands fulfillment, and the tribe imparts. Observe now as our ceremony starts. I'm going to open this up in another window. Let's see if I can do this. Move this over here. There we go. We're going to do the powwow illustrations again. Click over here. So, great rolling Winnebago trains, like buffalo, not want to wait. They thunder across the infant plains, discharging piles of human freight. This clan looks forward to this date. Each year they gaily praise it, for no one can appreciate fine art like those who raise it. Undaunted, culture proud, the tribe displays it. Arriving in his peace-mobile, which also serves as one fine pad, comes Ivan Paisley with no will to get the job he never had. Instead, he travels flower-clad across the Redlands learning them. Why shouldn't he when his dear dad owns half the stock in IBM? The Twinkle Bunny is what the tribe calls him. Be clad in purple pall and gold, with bonnet like a triple crown, ex-wived by 3 redmen old, forth-stepping with a mighty bound, comes dainty Gladys, nice and round, to sell some whistles of the Sioux that make a queer and crying sound, and stimulate the dancers too. Her servants bring her throne a fine church pew. Descending from his stately place, the blond, blue-eyed Chief Joseph C. He reaps his grandmother's sweet grace, who was full-blooded Cherokee. This noble lord from sea to sea and princely prance through life has met a maid from each ethnicity, but never with a red one yet. So he sets forth to have his scepter wet. Upon her noble steed she goes, a little maid of 3 or 4, with pudgy fingers up her nose, her daddy's shoulders never sore. With their minds bent on seeing more, straight toward my teepee they do stir, exploring, peeking through my door. Excuse me, but I live here, sir. And he, That's okay, ma'am. Just showing her. So, there's the whistle, by the way. So booths are posted and wares are sold. I lost my place. There it is. And floating dollar bills descend, and greedy ones outbid the bold before they let the dance begin. Grand entry marchers gambol in and entertain the crowd with ease. For whistles, every now and then, the reverent stompers seem to freeze, as if they have some spirit to appease. For superstitious Indians, a small flute is a godly thing. When any one to blow begins, no drummers drum, no singers sing, and dancers stop within the ring to honor such a silly sound. They think ignoring it will bring misfortune and disgrace around. And sometimes they will even kiss the ground. The gourd dance is a special treat. It always seems to steal the show. Some Vietnam vets keep the beat with old code talkers, Navajo. Respect for them folks have to show by standing hatless and away. But children, dashing to and fro, let vernal airs through woodlands play. Respect from Gladys in the cutest way. Now finally the day is done. The sanguine sky shows night is nigh. In love with dreams American, folks pack their wares and kids and fly. As in a whirlwind they swish by like seagull flocks no longer fed, while tribal elders wonder why we do this and then go to bed. And as they spy their littered earth with dread. So there it is. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Let's see if anybody understands the poem a little bit better now that I've given you a little background. I shouldn't have to do this. You should be able to do this on your own. All right. That's all. You guys have an awesome rest of the day, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.